What's up, you lazy, entitled, basement-dwelling millennials, bootstrapping boomers, apathetic Xers, and goddamn Gen Z kids today? Taylor and I have been really busy and forgot to schedule a guest for today. So we're just going to bullshit. We got a few things, current event stuff that we want to talk about, and we appreciate you guys sitting along for the ride and hope you enjoy the conversation. So we broke up into a couple episodes that we'll release back-to-back. To make it a little more palatable for you guys, because we don't know when to shut the fuck up. So,
it's not our strong
suit. Joining us. And yeah, we're gonna get going here. Enjoy, guys.
But no, I actually do want to talk to a flat earther. Like,
yeah,
I think it'd be.
I did talk to a flat earther once, in real life, and I didn't realize that they actually existed. So I was on this. They called it a radio show. It was more of a podcast. It's like I don't know. It's a digitally
was it ever live?
Yeah, I mean they're on some sort of like radio website or something. I don't know. It was pretty niche, and it was like it was an interesting thing to do, and the hosts are really nice and everything. But the co-host, after we were done, well, the one host brought up the flat Earth thing because he knew his co-host was a flat earther and wanted to have that conversation with somebody else, because I'm assuming they talk about this shit all the time. And I was like,
right.
And I tried to be nice because okay, this is a real person, and I'm just like, why would all of the world's space agencies be motivated to enter in a giant global, not global conspiracy? Flat Earth conspiracy, what are they trying to, what do they stand to gain by this? And, oh man, it got deep.
Yeah.
There's this whole other part of Antarctica that has all of these resources that they don't want the rest of the world to know about, so they can exploit them, except all of these organizations are in it together, right? And, I don't know why the world needs to be flat for there to be a hidden part of Antarctica, but it does. And there's also a glass dome, which I found interesting, that there's a glass dome over the Earth. Who made the glass dome? Was a question I had that they didn't have an answer for.
Right. Are they creationists in that sense? What's the deal there? You know?
Yeah.
And why would, if there is a secret base in Antarctica that people gain massive resources from, what entity is getting those resources, and why are they not using them in any way that we can visibly see them gaining an advantage over any other part of the planet
Yeah, it made no sense. And it's the more questions you asked, just the wilder the explanations for it got. But like I said, I still think that we should be treating climate change deniers as dumber than flat earthers, because as stupid as all of that sounds, if I go stand out in my field or on the beach or something, the world looks pretty fucking flat, from my own personal perspective, standing on the planet, it feels flat, right? Whereas in my 35 years on this earth, the weather has changed. It feels fucking hotter in the summer, and the storms are getting crazier. I can visibly see climate change happening. I don't have to believe anybody else. I can see it. So to be a climate change denier, you are exponentially dumber than a flat earther, which is already incredibly, incredibly stupid.
Right. Yeah. And to see, just measurements that show that the Earth has every year has been the hottest year ever in the last 30 fucking years. It's do you think every measurement taken across the planet is faked?
But it's also a giant conspiracy where global leaders. This is again the other thing. It's the elite green energy people who stand to make trillions and trillions of dollars influencing it, and if it weren't for the plucky oil and coal billionaires exposing their their wild secret cabal and saving us from clean energy.
Right, and non-polluted air and water. How dare you? Oh man.
It's oh wow, yeah. God, remember the good old days when we could do just like dumb episodes about shit like this, so there wasn't an existential crisis going on daily that we felt obligated to address for some reason.
No, it's just the normal, classic, you know, the proletariats being exploited by the bourgeoisie and the 1% versus the 99, and now there's possibly democracy is in question.
Possibly, I think we've blown past possibly. We are
Okay.
possibly.
Well, yes. I mean, so far there is no indication that there won't be a 2028 election. Whether Trump will be running in it is the question.
And we just have states actively redistricting to gerrymander whatever results they want for the 2026 elections, and trying to completely eliminate mail-in voting and early voting and basically any voting that doesn't allow only the people that they want to vote.
Yeah, those are somewhat more pressing concerns. I mean, although there is no more pressing concern than, gaining access to healthcare and, human rights.
Yeah.
But those don't come without any, with any of this happening. Yeah.
All right. Well, I suppose we can get going on the shit we actually came here to talk about. If you're in the comments, thank you for joining us in the lives. We are recording kind of a low-key podcast today because we have gotten very busy and forgot to ask people to join us. So we have to deal with each other's company for the first time in a while. I'm actually kind of excited about, it's been a while since we did it, just you and I.
I know. I was, when we were writing the outline a little bit, I was like, you know what? It kind of feels nice to do a little bit more research in depth into this and get back into, some more analytical side of things than the things that are worthwhile talking about. Certainly the guests that we bring on have a lot of expertise in whatever they talk about, generally speaking. So more than makes up for it, but
yeah, and I mean, and our guests are always, I mean, we've had a lot of incredible guests that have been have incredibly powerful and important things to say, and I'm glad that we are allowed to be one small platform for them to help get that out. It's kind of weird. We're talking about what we want to talk about for once in a while, and that's it's been a while, and it's kind of nice because it's definitely a lot less work to organize for interviewing somebody than it is to put everything together that we're gonna have to talk about. But
I mean,
again,
it's different work. It's different.
I miss the good old days. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, it would just be nice if we could just keep doing episodes about how, the populace would benefit from any of, one of many progressive policies and, the second Bill of Human Rights or second. Yeah. And like all those things and just focus on those aspects.
Yeah. And now we have to sit here and focus on just not being sent back to the Dark Ages every day, which is,
Yeah.
We used to be able to dream about pie in the sky. If we could just, put together a coalition and over the next 10 to 20 years work on implementing some of these progressive policies step by step, we could have universal health care and free school lunch and bring our infrastructure into the 21st century. And then it's like, oh no, now we need to make it so women are still allowed to vote next election and brown people aren't literally thrown in concentration camps. That's not nearly as fun as as what we were doing before.
No, although I did see that Alligator Alcatraz is being ordered to be taken down and shut down. So the courts
We'll see if they
are
follow through
doing,
with it, but
yeah, the courts are doing things.
well, the courts are
They
saying
also,
things. If they enforce
right,
those
they're
things,
saying, yeah, right. No, the arm of the enforcement, of course, is yet to be seen, because they didn't give a crap when Trump was deporting people um, in midair when they could have turned the plane around. Trump didn't care, just still kept going. So we'll see what happens. I mean, there's no repercussions to, like, a judge ruled that him sending National Guard troops into LA was illegal.
yeah.
Um, I mean, what are they going to do to him? You know, like, they're going to give him a yellow card, a couple more, you're going to get a red card.
Get over
Like,
here! I'm going to slap you on the wrist, okay?
like, honestly, like, I feel like the Supreme Court should have the ability to be like, hey, like, if you do these amount of legal things, we have a precedent to, like, engage this process in which, like, you could be impeached or something like
I
that.
mean, in theory, they do. They have the U.S. Marshals, which are supposed to answer to the court, the federal courts. And they could hold him in contempt, arrest him. I mean, there is mechanisms for them to, in theory, enforce these things. It's just they have not been willing to exercise those levers of power that they do have and see what happens, because obviously the entire judicial branch, and that's where it gets kind of hazy, is the
Department of
U.S.
Justice.
Marshals still fall under the Department of Justice, but they are supposed to answer to the courts, which are also part of, the judicial branch, and that's where it gets hazy, because, like, the Department of Justice is sort of overseen by the executive branch, but it's meant to execute the will of the judicial branch and the rulings of the judicial branch. And that's where it's like, maybe where that separation of power thing came in should have been thought out a tad bit more, because, like, if the people being like, they need to do this, but they're not technically the boss of those people, it sort of
Right.
causes a problem.
It's like the boss of another, like, department comes over to you and is like, you need to start doing something differently. You're just like, you're not my boss. You can't tell me what to do. Go talk to him and go fight it out with them, and then you can tell me. So, like, it doesn't make any sense to have the DOJ that controlled by the executive branch. So I agree.
No.
That appears to be a failing when the executive and legislative branch are basically controlled by the same group at this point. And even the judicial branch to an extent, like, clearly the Supreme Court, but they're,
and that's the other frustrating thing with the way that the founders set up our system of government, was, like, you didn't think that maybe the judicial branch should have some sort of accountability, like the Supreme Court might need some type of ethical accountability to maintain their positions. Like, didn't even figure, like, writing out just, like, maybe you guys shouldn't do these things, like, just nothing, just like, yeah, give them lifetime appointments and I'm sure it'll be completely fine.
Right. And, like, when they were writing out the rules for legislators that, like, you can't accept gifts and whatnot, like, they did not think, hey, there's a whole other branch of government that is also susceptible to these same type of bribers. Yeah. Maybe we should do something for them too at the same time. Let's just knock it all out.
Yeah. I don't know. It is one of the things I'm hoping about as, like, our entire system, it crumbles around itself, that hopefully at the point when it collapses in on itself, because I really don't see that not happening at this point, that it will allow a radical rebuild with a lot of these things in place that will... Because, I mean, Americans are not going to learn a new system of government, so when we put the pieces back together, if we ever do get to the point where we can put the pieces back together, it's going to look relatively similar to what we have now in form and function. Which is fine. Like, I don't think that the entire system is a flawed system. I think the separations of power were a great idea. I think that, the system with the right safeguards in place is a very functional system for a country of our size.
Right.
Just,
I mean, it would be largely more functional if we actually, used our antitrust laws effectively or at all. So, like, there is a path for us to do antitrust, but we just choose not to as the government. So,
right.
like, it really depends on us as the populace in some senses if we were to ever recreate that, to be like, this isn't a like, hey, these are laws that you decide when to enforce them. Like, these are the
Mm-hmm.
these are the bumpers, like if
Yeah.
you get this big, or if you do these things, if you participate in those type of actions, like, you are breaking those laws and you will be prosecuted
Mm-hmm.
no matter what. It's not a decision that the DOJ makes, or that
Right.
Lena Khan or
Yeah.
somebody decides to
Mm-hmm.
just like start action against any particular company, because that's how it is now. It's like,
Mm-hmm.
you just decide one day, oh, Amazon's on the list today. Oh, Walmart's on the list tomorrow. Oh,
Yep.
there's Google search. Like, is Google search really what we need to be focusing on with our antitrust laws at the moment? I don't think so.
Right.
I don't think that's the number
Yeah,
one issue.
and I mean, I think like for stuff like that, it shouldn't be hard to just set some hard set parameters of if a country or a company overextends those boundaries of those hard set parameters, they are automatically put into antitrust proceedings, and then it goes where it goes from there. But I
Right?
mean, I was
Yeah.
just talking the system of government of an executive branch and a legislative branch and a judicial branch, and like with some minor tweaks and changes that wouldn't really change how Americans interact with that system. Like,
Mm-hmm.
uh, we should make sure that the legislative branch grows with the population indefinitely. Like,
Mm.
it
Yeah.
should not be
Yeah.
capped. I personally would like to see. I think the Senate can stay, but the Senate should be uh, also tied to the state's population. And rather than having districts like what representatives do, so you've got your district that represent, your congressman or congresswoman that represents you, they'd still all be statewide elections. It's just you get, like California gets 10 senators and Wyoming gets one senator, and everybody in the state gets to vote on them. And you could stagger, because they're 6-year terms, you could stagger them out, so there'd basically be one year replacing every
Sure.
election most of the time.
Right. Would you do
Um,
like ranked choice vote? Obviously, ranked choice
yeah,
voting.
obviously ranked choice voting, get rid of the electoral college altogether, and then yeah, hard limits, like absolutely no corporate money in politics. Get money out of politics, make that a constitutional amendment. Uh, yeah, definitely
Yeah.
some sort of ethical accountability for the Supreme Court and federal judges in general.
Right.
That they don't get to write themselves. Uh,
Yeah. Well, I mean, they can. There can be a subcommittee or whatever, if they want to like help draft it, but like,
mhm.
obviously they wouldn't have the final say. Ideally.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I think it should just be it should be decided on outside by a nonpartisan committee. That's just basic, straightforward rules that the Supreme Court has to follow, and then they should it should be a separate department that's not obviously under the purview of the DO, or well, at least of the Supreme Court, that gets to investigate them when those things come up, and ultimately rule on if they violated them, and then force their removal from office. I would also do term limits, or just limits on how long the Supreme Court does serve.
Right. Yeah. I don't see why, like, at minimum, like 30 years. Like, I don't understand
Yeah.
why,
Mm-hmm. Like,
30
I
years is a
think it's
career.
perfectly, yeah, absolutely, perfectly reasonable to have them in and out. I also think that the Supreme Court should be tied to population and expand on some sort of reasonable scale.
Mm,
Um,
sure.
and I think that they should have to be. I don't know. I think that they, again, should have to be approved by a nonpartisan committee before being voted on by the Senate, because if you have a one-party controlled executive branch and Senate. They can push through whoever they want. And I mean, the judicial branch is supposed to be nonpartisan, and that's what we've gotten for the past 50 years is Republicans stacking the court in their favor, by ramming through as many appointees as they can when they have the power.
Yeah, the Mitch McConnell secret move.
So yeah, so I think like just a few of those things that would. Because then if you expanded the Supreme Court, you could limit how many justices the president is allowed to appoint during their term. Would work. I don't know. There's smarter people than me who could figure like the best ways to put safeguards into these systems, but I think that we could rebuild the system that would look very similar to what we have, but not be as corruptible and unenforceable as it is now.
Right. I mean, that's a good place to start. And then, as we move closer to, unlimited or not unlimited, but lack of resource scarcity, we move closer to the need for government. And then, you get to Star Trek. And I say Star Trek. I say Star Trek instead of communism on purpose.
Yeah, I'm feeling we're gonna get billionaires on Mars before we get Star Trek at this rate. So
that's very, very possible. Hey, unless this new government, in the wake of all this stuff, is able to actually rein in the ability for that level of exploitation and gaming the system.
Well, unfortunately, it takes people getting incredibly pissed off and uncomfortable and very poor before they're willing to make these kinds of big, uncomfortable changes. So we saw it the last, 100 years ago at this point. We were in a crashing economy, and, the Great Depression, because of basically the exact same policies they're implementing now, led to almost all of the economic and social progress we have up to this point. Like all of that, with the exception of the civil rights movement, everything basically passed in the 30s that was either directly what we have now or the foundation of what we have now for all social and economic programs. So
yeah, right.
Every 100 years, you just need to refresh the system, apparently.
Yeah. It's true.
Right. Well, yeah, I suppose we can get going with our actual scheduled programming here.
I mean, I feel like let's just roll right into it. So I guess, everybody's talking about chorus, and do you know?
We're not doing an intro for this one?
I don't fucking screw it. We'll just start it as if we. If we want to record an intro later, we can. But I say let's just roll with it. This has been good stuff up to this point.
Yeah. All right. Yeah, we can leave it, I suppose.
We do what we want.
Absolutely. Yeah. So you wanted to talk about chorus a little bit, and since we have not talked about chorus together at all, I am very curious to see, because you're the one who brought it up. So I'm very curious to see what your thoughts are, and if everybody who's not chronically online and has a job or a life and doesn't know what chorus is, article was written by Taylor Lorenz in Wired that supposedly exposed dark money ring funding left-wing creators by some big money pack, and that group is called Chorus. And yeah, that was the story that she wrote, and there's been a lot of backlash on both sides of this issue in the aftermath. So, not trying to steer the conversation in any way, shape, or form, I want to hear what Taylor has heard and thinks about this.
That was totally unbiased and very informative. I appreciate that. Yeah, I mean, I honestly don't. I believe it, mostly because it sounds very believable to me that there would be a PAC group that creates and works with a nonprofit or PAC group to pay for influencers to try to push them into saying things that they would want them to be saying. Like, that doesn't seem unreasonable to me. And the amount of money that they're talking about, like, I think I saw like $8,000 a month for most of them, is like a normal amount of money. It's not like $100,000 a week for Tim Pool from Russia, you know? But that's what it looks like. Is it looks like this, like, Russia level of like interference with our political discourse by potentially massive amounts of corporate money, which is not good to have that happen. I mean, the biggest things are I saw like a lot of people specifically about like David Pakman, how he's like, I always thought he was like a fairly progressive-ish type Democrat, as far as like, he definitely wasn't like a moderate Democrat. But like a lot of people were saying that he hasn't spoken about Palestine at all. And part of that is that this group is mainstream Democrat PAC. They don't want people to focus on Palestine at all because it's, you know, they don't want to talk about Palestine. I guess the DNC doesn't. So like, there's things like that come up, and then obviously just paying people and telling them that you can't, you know, give any sort of, you know, advisor out there that like, hey, this was a paid advertisement to say this. Like, you can't put it out there like, hey, this group has been paying me and these are the things they want me to talk about. I agree with some of them, and this is the ones I want to talk about. And like, you know, if you're being upfront about it, then it's no big deal. But if it is this secret thing where you're being paid to not talk about this contract, then that is pretty disingenuous. And it definitely hurts anybody who watches stuff like us and or creates things, you know, stuff like us, and or anybody's credibility moving forward, I guess.
Sure. So that sounds like you just read the article and then have kind of like checked out of the whole conversation since.
Yeah, I mean, I just heard about it like less than a week ago, so I don't know. Yeah.
So now I'll start with a disclaimer that I am a creator who is not in Chorus. I was initially invited when they first did their first rollout for the first cohort. And I sent in an application, and they never extended my invitation beyond that first application. So I have not personally seen any of the contracts. I have not been a part of the program. I have never received any money from Chorus. So I am doing this from a very preliminary outside perspective as a creator. That said, I also do know a number of creators who both had the same experience I did, where they were invited and did not get invited in, and creators who are currently a part of the program. And then Brian Tyler Cohen, who is one of the founders of Chorus, did a response along with a number of other influential leaders within the organization, dispelling a lot of the stuff that came from the article. And I mean, the article did not provide any wording directly from these contracts that they claim to have. Did not provide really any receipts whatsoever. And then supposedly Taylor Lorenz, the author, kind of spiraled out after she was called out on that and tried providing then some screenshots she said she had that disproved a lot of the points she was making. Here's the thing is Chorus has creators that you and I have had on this podcast that very much talk about Palestine on a very regular basis.
Sure.
I also know that Chorus doesn't pay creators to put out content. It's an incubator program. It teaches them how to create content that works within the algorithm. It's I don't know what the equivalent would be on the right at the moment. but it's a
You're right. Like anything like Charlie Kirk does, and or like the Daily Wire or something like that.
mhm. Daily Wire would probably be similar, and I think that that is what's important to note here is that like the left has been notably missing this for a long
Oh yeah.
time, and again, I can't speak specifically to what's in the contracts. I've again have friends in there that have explained, gotten a few $100 or a few grand from incubator training programs they participated within Chorus, and that's what it's designed to do. At least the way it's been explained to me is provide creators with the resources they need to be able to do this job effectively, rather than what you and I do, where we just wing it with a little bit of money and time that we have, and hope to provide something productive. And I really think that this is one of those attempts to undermine people on the left for not passing whatever purity test they feel like it is, or in a very real sense, Taylor Lorenz has said that. She's all but praised Nazis. She said when she did a interview with them that, oh, well, yeah, they're Nazis, but they're really nice people. Like, they were nice to me, and I could understand how you could get like sucked into it and this kind of thing. And then she goes on and does stuff like this, and it doesn't feel genuine from that sense. So I don't
To
know.
be
It,
fair,
it
I don't
mostly
really
seems like,
know who like Taylor Lorenz is all that much.
oh yeah, no, she's been fired from a few notable publications. I think like the Washington Post and
Daily Mail, Daily Beast, Business Insider. Yeah, those are not the greatest publications.
yeah.
um,
So
yeah,
um I think that the
yeah,
responses from Chorus leadership have been really solid, have provided all of the information asked for, aside from specifically like the full contracts, which
hmm
is understandable. A lot of legal contracts don't get released for
for sure.
obvious reasons.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah.
but they've been fairly transparent. Some of the people who have been in Chorus have talked about being in Chorus. So I don't know. I don't really know that there's anything nefarious with the organization at all. I don't know exactly where all of the money comes from, and I do think that later down the road that could turn into something problematic. But at this point, uh, it's something that's needed, and I don't think that that's a place that we really need to be focusing on. And I don't think that any of the creators involved, their involvement is disingenuous in any way. At least none of them that I'm familiar with. I do
Sure.
think that certain creators like David, and here's the thing: is so this rolled out in like April or May. Um,
Mm.
so it's new. So to say that David Pakman was a progressive creator and he's not talking about Palestine because of his involvement with Chorus is kind of ridiculous, because then he would have been talking about Palestine right up until April or May when he would have rolled into the first cohort of Chorus, right? I mean, even if he
Theoretically,
was early adopted into it a few months back, but he's been doing this for years. Um,
true.
Aaron Pernos is another one I've heard of people call him a Zionist, and I don't know. I'm not friends. I have no personal relationship with Aaron Pernos. I feel like he rarely actually talks about like his perspective on the news, and more just
hmm
reports what's going on specifically. Um, and so I don't know. I feel like it's once again us taking fights with ourselves over something that's a non-issue when we have literal Nazis running the country right now.
Yeah, I mean, I can get that perspective, and I think it really how you react to this depends on how much of this information you take at face value.
Mm-hmm.
Because I think if you aren't taking it at face value, then what you said makes total sense, and I couldn't disagree with that at all. But if there are facets of the article and the reporting that are true, then I still think that's not a terrible take, but like if there are facets that are true, those big aspects of anybody getting a particular paycheck and that has guiding rails on what they can and can't say, and then can't talk about how much they're getting paid or by who, to not to say anything in particular, then that is a problem. It doesn't matter if there are bigger problems out there.
And they have come out officially and said that there is no restrictions or requirements on what creators can and can't talk about. And when they said, because in part of that article, I remember they stated that, like, oh, they're not even allowed to work with other organizations without getting permission from Chorus first. And that's... I know that's utterly ridiculous because I was just working with creators on a few projects here recently that are those creators are a part of Chorus, and they have not been... I know that they weren't calling and asking for permission to do these projects that we were working on together prior, and I know that obviously they weren't Chorus projects because I was involved and I'm not part of Chorus. I know some of the other people who were involved. I know who invited me personally, and I know that they have nothing to do with Chorus. There's no connection there. So, like, it's one of those things where, like, there's so many things that I just know from base value of just working around and with these people and in these circles that are complete and utter bullshit. As for the amounts of money, I've heard people get paid as low as a couple $100 a month. Some people make nothing, and it's just a training opportunity for them. Some people, make larger amounts of money, and I don't know how they decide on that. I don't know if there is any stipulations that come if you start receiving that money. I have no idea on those specific things, but I do know that...
Right, and theoretically, the specific contracts that Taylor Lorenz is referring to are not the regular contracts. Like, they could, theoretically treat the people that you and I talk to that are not the 10 or 12 particular people that they identified. Like, that's still a possibility. Not saying that I think it's a great, highly likely to be that way, but like what you're describing doesn't eliminate that possibility, I think. And honestly, I don't have
without any evidence that she can provide, like, hard facts, no citations, no direct terminology from these contracts. I don't know how to. I can't take any of that article at any more face value because the leadership from Chorus has provided that information, and then obviously talking to people that I trust who are a part of the program, telling me what they've done being a part of it, does not jive with any of that. Even people who were accepted into Chorus, read the contracts, decided that they didn't like the way the contracts were written, and decided not to participate with it, even said that everything in the article was either wildly misleading or complete bullshit from the contract that they had seen, and they had gotten obviously further down the line than I did. So, I mean, taking that from people who, again, chose not to be in it because of the contracts, also still said that that's not what was in the contract. They just didn't like the requirements that Chorus had for them to be a part of the program. But it was nothing nefarious or, like, dark money implemented. So I don't know. I don't know. Again, I can only speak from what I know personally, but I also, again, think that this is an incredibly stupid thing for us to be fighting each other over. When,
I mean, if everything that you're saying is not that you're like lying purposefully, but if like what you're saying and what people have said is true, and what if Chorus is telling the truth and refuting these allegations, then it's definitely a nothing burger, and probably will forget about it in like 2 weeks. Except for the right wing media that will take this and continue to run with it forever and ever, as long as they possibly can.
And that's the frustrating thing, too, is that the right-wing media will take and run with this for as long as they can, and then the people on the left who are taking and running with this just completely have forgotten and allowed the right-wing media to get away with the fact that they were taking literal billions of dollars or millions of dollars from Russia to do what they are accusing apparently kind of people on the left of doing now for far less money and not from a foreign country.
Right. And nothing like inflammatory. Like they're basically they're just telling them to be mainstream Democrats. Please.
Right.
Which
is the other wild thing. It's like, so if you turn on any mainstream news source, all of these people are getting paid by large corporations to
Right.
say a specific narrative or agenda, and nobody's like, oh, hey, they shouldn't get paid for this, or they should have to, disclose specifically where that news station gets all of their funding from, and like, and we
Yeah,
can
but
talk
those
about the problems with
people,
mainstream media all we want, but the fact that they're
right?
trying to
But
hold creators to some higher standard than the news sources is
no,
a
I think if they said, "Hey, I'm sponsored by Chorus," like, and Chorus is I'm part of Chorus Network, then people wouldn't care
Mhm.
because they'd be like, "Okay, you're part of PragerU, you're part of the Daily Wire, that's expected." But like to say I'm an independent creator who has nobody influencing me, I think that's where the problem lies.
I mean,
If they're actually
right.
dictating
If
any
they're putting
aspects of
out their content
uh,
creation, which again, as
right,
far as I know, they are
right,
not at this
sure,
point.
absolutely.
Um, but
But
then,
I agree. It's, I mean, I'm one of the chat,
yeah,
was like, the right have billionaire and billionaire, multiple billionaire networks and stuff. And we have one group Chorus that's possibly doing something, their conscience is clear. I don't really,
hmm
it only bothers me because in the end, it's more harmful to potentially people in general by not advocating
hmm
for things that would be better for them. So, like, in that sense, and to like say that you're in our tent and you're for like being pro life, pro people, but then to advocate for things that aren't as good for people as you could be, like, that's the annoying part to me. So, in that sense, I guess you could say that's like purity testing, but it
yeah. I mean, yeah,
is
there. It's a hard line to walk, I suppose. I'm a huge advocate, obviously, for more transparency in what we do, but it's also a difficult thing. Like, where does that line get drawn? So I get invited by the DFL to go interview candidates, and that's a an opportunity that obviously I'm going to say yes to. And at this point, they haven't paid me, but maybe they compensate my admittance into a program, or they invite me to a place where I get fed dinner or something like that, and that could be seen as compensation. And you've been with me to events like this. Do I? Is it transparency required to disclose like all of those nuanced details about how I come to gain those connections? Is that affecting the way that I present my content?
mm-hmm.
I don't know. And obviously,
Yeah.
I have a vested interest. Like, obviously, I want to appear impartial, and I try to do my best to do that. I feel like when I get those opportunities,
Yeah.
um, but it's hard to say. And then we still have to pay our bills too, right? So like,
Right. No.
um,
Yeah. And we're also not massive, influencers that impact millions of people that they see on the internet. So, like,
yeah,
I mean, I think obviously, if we were getting, paid at least expenses to like fly to a DNC convention, it would be very reasonable for us to just say, yeah, the DNC has invited us to go to this and paid for our travel to be here, like that would
mm-hmm.
be reasonable. And I think that would be all it would take, you
Yeah,
know,
fair enough, fair enough. Yeah,
but sounds like this is all circumstantial at best. And
yeah.
so,
So when you said you wanted to talk about it, I was like, all right, we can talk about it. I know, and obviously, I've been in the middle of kind of like I'm not in the middle of the shitstorm, but I get to see the
right,
middle of the shitstorm from everybody
right.
else who's like
You're
in it.
tangentially connected to people who
Yeah,
are kind of in it.
and so like I got sent
Yeah.
the article first from a follower, and then from another mutual who also didn't get past the first round into chorus. And we're like, oh yeah, this looks like not great. And then I talked to the person who did get invited but decided not to continue, and they're like, oh yeah, most of this is bullshit. Like the contracts were something that she felt like sucked, so didn't move forward with them. But like the
hmm
the way that they're presented here was completely wrong, and then started hearing from people both in and outside within as it kind of blew up, and obviously doing a little bit more research. Because again, for me, and deciding who I continue to kind of interact with and collaborate with in this sphere, I felt it was important for me to at least sort of understand what was going on and feel like it was something I could continue to associate with certain creators that are associated with it. And at this point, I feel perfectly fine associating with any creator involved in Chorus, and if I don't feel comfortable associating with them, it's not specifically because of their involvement with Chorus. It would have been something else about their
for sure. Yeah, and I didn't do like a deep dive into it by any means. I just sort of saw the surface level, and in fact, I didn't even read the article. I just saw people talking about it and listen to what people I trust.
I'm well prepared for this one.
Well, I trust their ability to discern and at least gather what's happening, and like just saying if any of it is true, then it's quite shady. But like if it isn't, then yeah, it's just another fucking bullshit attempt for a probably right-leaning person to make their name and slander, Democrats or whatever, left-leaning organizations. So,
yeah, no, I do think that it was a hit piece and definitely clickbait and an attempt by a less than mediocre journalist to be relevant again. So,
fair enough. Fair enough.
And I will say again, I don't know specifically where the money comes from, and that to me has been the probably the least transparent part about it. But it seems like none of these creators specifically know where the money comes from, because it's obviously it's big donations that they're getting and small donations, and however they're getting their donations funneled through a PAC. But if the creators who are getting training programs in an incubator are getting a paycheck without specific requirements to do anything on it, I don't particularly see a problem with that, whether the money's coming from big dark money liberal George Soroses or whatever. So
yeah, no, that is fair. I mean, there's probably not too many David Koch type people that are going to be funding a group like Chorus to pay for Democratic leaning or left leaning creators to help them create content. So there's probably not a huge risk of overly like fascist billionaire, like trying to get to like fool these people into making better content and get better engagement. Yeah. I don't know.
Yeah, and you definitely don't get into left-leaning content for the money, that's for sure.
No, you don't.
Believe me, I messed up. I really should have went the MAGA route. I'd be doing my house would be paid off by now with this following. Right. Yeah. So, anyway, fair moving enough. On. To a less controversial topic: gun violence.
Did you hear anything more about Walz wanting to do a special session to specifically focus on gun legislation? I saw that he said somewhere that he wanted to. I have no clue what that means. If that means he's actually going to do it.
Everything I've heard is that he's planning on doing it, but no specifics have actually come forward with that yet.
For sure.
Obviously, I'm sure that everybody at this point knows that we had a very tragic mass shooting in a church full of school children in Minneapolis, and that has, rightfully so, warranted a pretty big reaction from Minnesota lawmakers, and a lot of people are trying to do something with the power they have at the moment to address it, and that's at this point looking like Governor Walz calling a special session for Minnesota legislatures to pass some sort of gun violence legislation. Not sure what that looks like. There's a lot of talk about assault weapons bans, I don't know. They haven't really. Again, this is all very new, very fresh. They haven't really come forward with any type of serious legislation that's been put on the table that I've seen yet. Yeah, and you and I
Yeah.
have been talking about this kind of behind, and I've avoided talking about this too much because I don't want to politicize a tragic event like this. I definitely think that
I okay, but
what did
I
you?
do
Yeah.
I understand like the reaction to not wanting to politicize something as tragic as this. But I feel like at this point, if we don't politicize it, then it will just continue to happen. Like it has happened too many times over the last decade or two for this to be just a like random act of violence. Like it is random, and it obviously um, is tragic. But if we don't do anything about it, then they're just going to continue to be seemingly random acts of violence instead of something that we could try to hone in onto and
Mm-hmm.
stop or reduce the effectiveness or reduce them, eliminate them entirely. So like I don't really buy into that anymore. Like we don't want to politicize it because
Right, but then politicizing it is also saying, well, then clearly we need to have more oppressive trans legislation because the shooter was trans, and this is where the politicization always ends up going. I mean, that's all
well,
I've seen
you can't just
from.
eliminate trans people. So like, what's the legislation going to be? Like,
I
what
bet
you can?
Republicans feel like you probably could.
I
I'm not.
no, like
Uh,
I don't think the fact that the shooter in this case was trans has anything to do with the
Oh, I
obviously the large
absolutely
number of
don't. But that
shootings.
is
So
immediately where the political
hmm,
rhetoric went to, and where the
I
fight
actually didn't hear
ended. I
that.
mean, oh, the day up, man, you need to be more chronically online. No,
I know, I guess.
then they've been saying, they start. There's just been now a list of every trans mass shooter in the past decade or whatever, and there's a
Hmm,
handful of them. And obviously, if you put that right alongside a list
right,
of cis white gender mass shooters, it's like 0.04%. But
right, yeah.
the fact that the shooter
Well,
was
I mean,
trans,
obviously, it's
yeah,
like focusing on the 10 NCAA athletes that are trans, and then trying to make
right.
legislation on the other
Mm-hmm.
million athletes. Like anybody who has a brain cell or two to rub together, sees past that. So I don't really care. Like obviously, I care in the sense that I don't want like trans people to be the subject of more political violence by right wing and conservative people. But like, I don't think that should be like we need to do something,
No,
and having
I
that pull
agree
us
that
back.
something needs to be done. And then I guess this is the other topic that we were talking about kind of behind the scenes is the most effective way to address these issues is obviously going to be addressing healthcare and poverty. Uh, poverty poverty just across the board. And this is where I think I get really frustrated. We've talked about this before is that they take mass shootings and then they talk about gun violence being the number one killer of children. Now, gun violence is the number one killer of children with some like heavy caveats. Obviously, that includes suicide, that includes accidental deaths, and that includes homicides. Children a lot of times stretch out to include 19, and all of that is sort of irrelevant, right?
Hmm.
All of those things are an epidemic in this country, and is it that gun violence is the number one killer of children, or is it that poverty is the number one killer of children, and guns are used to exact those deaths? And that's where I really feel like we spend so much time focusing on the gun argument, and then when we have a mass shooting like this, it should really be treated like a terrorist attack, like the Oklahoma City bombing or the Nice truck attacks, where they drive through a crowd of people. Um, it gets it takes all of that focus on, we need to address poverty, we need to address healthcare and mental health care. Obviously, half of gun deaths are suicides, kind of across the board, and that's a very different problem than shooting somebody on the street, over a disagreement or a drug deal or domestic abuse. Like, these are different problems that have different solutions, and so addressing the poverty and the healthcare issue is going to reduce the number of children who die from gun violence or any other type of violence from domestic abuse, just across the board. And then that's an entirely different issue than mass shootings and assault weapons. And that's where this always goes, is you get a mass shooting, and then the focus is put onto assault weapons. And we can absolutely talk about how AR-15 is going to likely do more damage in a mass shooting than another type of weapon. And that's fine. I'm not here to argue that. But banning assault weapons, which are responsible for 1 to 2% of gun deaths nationwide, will have statistically zero effect on guns being the number one killer of children, right? And so, like,
Right.
it takes off, and I feel like we spend so much political capital and time trying to solve one issue, thinking that it's going to solve another issue, and when we lump those things in together and say, mass shooting at a school, tragedy, guns are the number one killer of children. If we ban assault rifles, guns will no longer be the number one killer of children. It leads people to believe that the number one killer of children are children dying at school from gun violence, and that's not the case. And then we will pass legislation that won't address either of those.
Yeah, no, that's 100% true. There's nothing about that I would argue with, and we've literally done episodes where we spent an hour and a half talking about how there are ways that gun laws could be effective in reducing gun violence, but it's a potentially small margin that could even reasonably be affected by the most effective laws that have been in place in other countries, other than a literal outright complete ban of all guns and confiscation that is 100% compulsory, right? But like, there's a difference between politicizing that and focusing on like the gun assault weapons ban versus politicizing it and focusing on like the root cause. Like, if there was a group of if there was an organization that was committing terrorist acts across the country over the last decade, and we only focused on the tools that they were using to commit those acts of violence, that would be crazy. We'd want to go take down this organization, which is
kind of what we're doing, right? I mean,
in what way?
Loosely, a mass terror organization committing these attacks over the last decade has been white supremacists. Like, the Minneapolis shooter was a white supremacist. Dylan Roof was a white supremacist. All of these people are white supremacists, and they are a decentralized group of terrorists, and we are not focusing on that being the root cause of the vast majority of these shootings.
I don't know, right? I don't know,
attacks in general.
Sure, I would say terroristic attacks obviously is white supremacy, but like this mass shooting in particular, and many school mass shootings, and just gun violence in particular, is not necessarily linked to white supremacy in that sense. I'm just referring to, my analogy was going to be that instead of this terrorist group or white supremacy, the organization that's driving this gun violence is mental health and the lack thereof, and healthcare in general. And that if we need to focus on something, we need to politicize it and push towards those things. And so that was going to be my analogy.
No. And I agree entirely. I mean, I think, again, the Minneapolis shooter, with the information that we have, definitely seems like he was very deep in far-right white supremacist rhetoric. I don't think he was a part of an official structured white supremacist organization, just the red pill pipeline that allows these people to exist. And obviously incredibly mentally unstable. And I think that those people tend to be easy prey for these red pill white supremacy rhetoric and talking points that allow these people to be uncontrolled sleeper agents. If we had full-time
therapists at schools that children could go see, at minimum children, at schools,
Yeah.
then probably a lot of those people that have those issues, probably they don't do anything even remotely at this level.
Absolutely.
Like if you're not going to make it universal for everybody, at least make it universal, like school lunches, for children, because if you're starting at children, eventually they're going to be adults, and eventually all adults will have gone through some sort of universal mental health care
analysis.
and or that becomes normalized, and then maybe we can do something about it without this just sweeping policy action. Although I think universal mental health is obviously even in schools still an incredible leap for the United States to make, much considering we can barely get states to fund food, much less mental care for our children. So
we're a million miles away from all of it, and I think that's where it gets frustrating too. Is we are probably about as close to any of the gun control a lot of these legislators and organizations are calling for as we are to mental health care, universal health care, real social safety nets for poverty that would solve a lot of these problems. And and I think that is like where we only have so much political capital to spend. We, in this current situation, probably aren't going to make much ground on either, but where should we be focused on making that ground if we're going to trudge through the mud? And and I think one of the other things that frustrates me, and maybe where I was trying to talk about the politicization aspect of this, is because a lot of times it's like mental health has become the buzzword from the right of it's not the guns, it's mental health. So the left automatically reacts to any time you bring up mental health care in response to gun violence and mass shootings and things like that. You can't have that honest conversation because they are already on the defensive of you're just trying to undermine their gun control argument, and which again I understand because that's Republicans and the GOP for years have been like, oh, it's a mental health problem, and also let's cut all mental health funding. But I'm over here and I've been very frustrated because I don't know how to talk about it in those situations without feeling like I'm being insensitive to people who have a very traumatic reaction to this, as they should. I mean, it's a very traumatic experience. And so that's where I struggle with it. You know what I mean? Like,
I know I can understand that. That's definitely something to consider. I think if we're framing it in an effective way, it probably shouldn't matter whether or not it's a right-wing talking point. And in fact, we can throw that in the face of conservatives and say, if you're truthfully, if you ever had a bone in your body that was actually trying to govern a people instead of just being contrarian in every way whatsoever and just be a complete, anarchist, libertarian, hellscape, then stand with us. And this is something that we can actually do. Not that will ever happen.
No, but I do think that this is part of the failure of Democratic lawmakers over the past decades. I mean, people have been talking about the need to address mass shootings for years, and it's always been the same talking points of assault weapon ban versus it's a mental health problem. And nobody has ever actually exploited that, right?
Not on the Democratic side.
the left could have said okay and had legislation ready to go for a moment like this, like bills across the country ready to drop on the states and federal level. That'd be like, all right, you say it's a mental health problem, here we go, mental health bill 1, 2, 3. This should be bipartisan because you said it, and get it passed.
Right.
And they haven't done.
And call the bluff. Like, that's the minimum. That's the minimum. Call the bluff. Right.
And just repeatedly do it. And that's where I've gotten like incredibly frustrated with this whole topic, because we could be using this to push a needle that would solve multiple problems instead of working on a band-aid that might slightly reduce one problem.
Yeah, for sure. And that's, obviously we share this frustration with what Walz and the DFL, Democrats are going to be doing in this said special election, is there's just seemingly that's not their talking points at all, and they're not going to discuss the root cause of any of this, and nothing is going to change, and they're going to use political will, and then right wing people are just going to have more political capital and more. They're taking away our guns, when it comes to 2028,
And like Lindsay here in the comments says, why can't we do both? And the problem is we can't do either because we have a very divided, nonpartisan partisan legislature across the country. But they could easily throw both bills down. Like Democrats could come with an assault weapons ban bill if they wanted, and a mental health bill, and put both of them on the table. And again, call their bluff. Now, again, neither would probably pass, but you could continue to push this forward and be like, look, we've offered multiple potential solutions to this problem, and we've gotten nothing in return, no legislation in return to address it whatsoever. We've gotten no work with this. Or you continue to put the pressure on in a situation like this where there's mass public support to do something and say, you say it's mental health, we agree we need more mental health, we'll push that. Otherwise, we're going to continue to push on gun bills that you are outright not going to support, and either way, you're gonna lose political capital, and we could drain them of political capital in that sense, and we don't ever.
Right, and like we said, like doing both, like one is truly effective, and one is a band-aid. Like every study that's been done that looks at the efficacy of specific gun laws shows that, like, at most there's a low to moderate effect in reducing gun violence. Like, other than complete, confiscation. Like, there's just really, like, if they're available and people have the will, and if people have the will, then they will do it. But if they don't have the will because they have a good life, they don't have to worry about 2/3 of the bankruptcies in America being healthcare related, and they have access to mental services, then those are some pretty big reductions, I would think, to anybody doing it's crimes in general.
And across the board, you can look at this. Anywhere you implement more healthcare, mental health care, education, and poverty safety nets, crime goes down across the board. And that's the other thing, is like we should be focusing on this as a how do we save the most lives, period, right? Like, it shouldn't just be gun violence and gun deaths, and I hate that we focus specifically on this one specific thing. And it's like, how about let's focus on saving the most lives, period, and this legislation would reduce gun violence and gun deaths, but all deaths and all violence by implementing these, and we could capitalize on these,
and not to mention economically save the country money in the long term. Like,
it's a triple win, a quadruple win. I mean, there's no downside to it whatsoever, aside from some billionaires might have to pay a few more dollars in taxes, and that's really where the major obstacle.
They'll still be able to buy all the yachts that they could possibly want. Like this,
but that number in the bank account will be slightly lower, and that makes them feel sad because they're all racing to be the biggest billionaire, and
have the biggest penis-shaped rocket go to space, right?
All right, moving on from gun violence. I think we've talked about this one enough. I really, I would love to see the DFL. I would love to see states across the country and our federal legislators using these types of tragedies to really use public opinion to push change that will legislation that will affect change for everyone across the country, specifically saving children's lives across the country, and not be knee-jerk reactions to an emotionally traumatic experience with legislation that will burn a bunch of political capital and not have the desired effects that we are looking for, short-term or long-term, I think. And that's
what it comes down to.
Yep. All right. Epstein.
Our favorite topic, honestly.
All right, guys, and we felt like this was the best part to break it up for you and make it a little more palatable. So if you are interested in continuing to hear the rest of this conversation, we're releasing them back to back here, so you can just pick up right where you left off when it's easy for you guys to finish this one out. And if not, well, we appreciate you hanging with us this long, and we'll see you next week.